Okay, let's call the meeting to order. This is City Council work session for Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. Let's rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Rogers, can you roll call, please?
Councilman Scaringi,
Present.
Councilwoman Riley,
Present.
Councilwoman Friedman,
Present.
Councilman Burns. I spoke with him earlier today. He should be here soon. Councilman Strawn,
present.
Councilman Scanlon,
Present.
and President Resinetti.
Present.
That's 6 here, 1 absent. Burns.
Okay.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we'll count you as present.
Okay, great. Let's start with Chief Dan Engelson. He has our 21-26 on the agenda. Chief, go ahead.
Hey, I'm looking for a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an MOU for a regional FEMA assistance to firefighters grant for extrication tools for the Binghamton Fire Department. This is a grant with Kirkwood, Conklin, Town of Binghamton, and 5 Mile Point to get basically the jaws of life is what everybody knows about that, and the various cutting tools and spreaders to go along with that. Our tools are the current ones we have. We purchased in 2006. They're getting pretty old. It's almost impossible to get parts for them. And it's a hydraulic system, so you have to be hooked up to a hose for it to work. So it sort of limits where we can go. And this new system we're looking to get is battery operated. The cost of the system is $76,300. We have a 10% matching cost. So the cost for the city would be $7,630.
Okay.
Questions?
Any questions?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Friedman.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Chief. I was just wondering if you could tell us why this piece of legislation is expedited.
Oh, thank you.
That's on my end. This has sort of been happening pretty quickly. The application period is only open until February 12th. And all the other municipalities all have to sign the same MOU. I was just trying to make sure it got pushed through as quickly as possible so we could meet the deadline for the grant.
And Councilwoman, this is Kenneth Frank. The chief had sent me the MOU. I actually didn't open it until today, at which point I told him that needed council approval. It was really applying for the grant was the key issue, and that needs to be done immediately.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let me just take a second to remind everybody, if you're not talking, if you don't mind muting yourself, just that way we're not hearing all that background noise. And let's move on to Mr. Paddock. Tell us about RL 21-16 and RL 21-21.
Okay, the first one, RL 21-16, is to amend the 2021 DPW budget for court improvements. We're doing court improvements on the 6th floor. We need to establish a separate account. So what we're looking to do is to move money from our building equipment and maintenance line over to the court improvements line in the amount of $35,000.
Any questions or comments?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Friedman.
Go ahead,
Yep.
Councilwoman.
Thank you. So I was looking in my budget book, and I was wondering, because in this RL it's asking to establish what I think is establish a new line for court improvements in order to transfer the money. But I do see a line for court improvements for the same amount, $35,000, that's already under the building equipment improvement and maintenance line. Is this an additional 35,000 in a new line?
No, it's just to take the 35,000 and put it into that court improvements line, the 54611.
Okay, because I was just confused because the budget line in the RL is 54610, or wait, hang on one second. Right, the 54611 appears to be a new budget line.
Yeah, and we wanted to have that broken out for court improvements.
I see. Okay, and so that's in addition to the the $35,000 for court improvements, that's under 54610 for a total of 70,000. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And the next one is RL 2121. This is to amend the 2020 budget for refuge bag production. Basically, we need to transfer 12,000 from our refuge gas and diesel budget to support the refuge bag production for both our 32-gallon bags and our 16-gallon bags, as we have a shortfall with our waste all manufacturer in the amount of $12,000.
Any comments or questions regarding this?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Riley.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Hi, Mr. Paddock. Can you clarify for me? We are talking about the blue bags for the
You are
city.
Yes, that's correct. The 32-gallon bags and the 16-gallon bags, correct.
But those are revenue generating, correct?
Well, they are, yes.
So,
But we still have to, with our manufacturer, we got a bill for them at the end of the year, a last one from Wasto in the amount of $12,000. So to balance that budget, we had to move money from our refuge gas and diesel budget to this bag production line.
okay. So now this bill is an annual bill. How often are we billed?
On a regular basis, but we had one that came in, obviously here in December, that was more than we anticipated.
Okay. And do we know why that occurred? Why we had a larger bill than expected?
You know, I don't right off the top. The only thing I can say is that that one bill came out later than anticipated.
Okay, and when you say regular, again, just for my own understanding, we get a monthly bill or a quarterly bill for these bags?
It's usually quarterly.
Quarterly. And we do amass enough revenue typically to cover the cost.
I would say it's close, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions for Mr. Paddock? Okay. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. So let's move on to Mr. Standish. Talk to us a little bit about RL 21-11.
Yes, this resolution is to authorize the mayor to enter into a supplemental number 3 agreement with Barton & Judas. As you are aware, the Army Corps and DEC do annual inspections. And this year and last year's 18 and 19, 2 years ago, 18 and 19, there were deficiencies that were observed. And so we had to do further investigation, and we hired Barton & Judas to do that. They had to do inspection, closer inspection, and do video coverage of the outfalls and pipes that go through the flood walls and levees. During those inspections, there were some discrepancies that had to be looked after. And so this supplemental is to do the design for those repairs and replacements as necessary to get the inspections approved by the Corps and DEC.
This is something that we have to do annually, and the DEC requires us to do this, correct?
Annual inspection, yes.
Okay. Okay, any questions, any comments regarding this?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Friedman.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Could you tell us why this is expedited, please?
Yes, it's so that we can get all the paperwork and the design done so we can go out as early as we can in the construction season and get it done.
But just to clarify, there's no upcoming deadline or anything. This is just expedited to get the ball rolling as fast as possible.
Yes, we can't drag these repairs out too long, or you could face fines. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to RL 21-17.
2117, that's a supplemental agreement with Barton and Judas for would be for construction management, design, construction inspection for the 6th Ward Interceptor project that's been ongoing. The 30% design was done. This is to do the final design and then the construction review and inspection services for when that does go out. We'll anticipate it to go to bid and construction next season, 2022, because it's got to be approved by the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEC. And part of it has to run through a small levee that's beside Pierce Creek. And so the permitting that's required takes time, their review takes time. And I was hoping to get this squared away so we could do it this year, but unfortunately it won't be done, can't go out to bid until next year.
Any questions?
Yes,
Yes,
this is Councilwoman. Uh-oh.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead,
Councilwoman
Aviva.
Riley.
Go-
Okay, all right, I'll go first. I'm going to ask a predictable question. In light of the fact that this is for the 2022 season, can you explain why this piece of legislation is expedited?
This one is expedited because due to COVID and the holidays, it didn't get on the docket as soon as it should have. And because of the long review by the Army Corps and DEC, we want to get this moving right along. So the further we delay it, the longer it'll take for their review.
I see. And even this would be in jeopardy for the 2022 season if we wait any longer for this?
It just gives them more time to work on the permitting.
I see. Okay. Thank you. There's a lot expedited in this packet, so I'm just trying to make sure, that we're expediting as necessary. So thank you.
Yep, I understand.
Councilwoman Riley, did you have a comment as well or a question?
I did. Thank you for recognizing me, President Rezzanetti. Mr. Standish, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. Last time we met, we talked about the bidding process. And of course, I won't be able to quote the legislation, but we talked about how there were 2 submissions and you decided to be fair in the matter and give part of the job to one and part of the job to another. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but do you remember that conversation?
Yes, that was for the traffic signal at Washington and Hawley and the pedestrian safety project.
I am so glad your memory is much better than mine. So thank you for that. Now, for these kinds of long-term projects, when there's a phase 1, 2, and 3, do we bid those out so that other agencies are able to become the vendor of choice? Or, for example, I know you talked about this one is agreement number 2, and there's a third phase. Will Barton and LaJudas be the recipient or the partner for that project, or will that go out similar to the
The way,
traffic
the way,
signal?
the way these go is that we, for professional services, you can't do a bid. It has to be by interview. So you put out an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications. The consultants submit their qualifications. They get reviewed by a committee. The committee makes a short list of three. Three firms are interviewed, and a selection is made on who we feel the best firm is from those three. And then they negotiate a fee and the scope of services, and that's how we get them hired. Now, the RFQ, when I put that out, the RFQ usually says for design and construction review, permitting, whatever is necessary, but we only do like maybe a portion of that as the original contract, like design. And then when they are near the end of the design and they have a better handle on how much time it would take them to do the construction review and how long it would take to do the project, we do a supplemental for the construction review and inspection services. Now, on big projects like this one, we did a original contract to do a preliminary design and up to 30% design. And at that point, we did a supplemental. We're doing a supplemental now for the remainder of the design, permitting, and construction review and inspection. But those were all listed in the original RFQ.
Okay,
They
thank
weren't
you
in-
so much.
Yes, if they weren't in the original RFQ, I would have to put out another RFQ for those services.
That helps tremendously. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Okay, let's go to RL 21-24.
This is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into supplemental 2 with Barton and Judas for additional design services and bid phase for the Deco district. And this one is similar in nature. We had an original agreement for preliminary design, and now that we are ready to do a more in-depth final design, this is they have a better handle on how much it would cost to do that. So now we come with the supplemental for that portion.
Any questions?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Friedman.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Madam President. Predictably, I'm going to ask, can you please tell us why this RL is expedited?
This one is expedited because we have a grant for this, and we want to keep the time frame moving forward so we can get the work started for this year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Moving on to Megan. Megan, are you there?
I am.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you tell us a little bit about RL 21-13?
Yes, thank you. So RL 21-13, if you recall, back in August, City Council authorized agreements with 6 partner churches to expand their community meals programs. So as a part of that, House of Worship was allocated up to $11,000 in CDBG funds for capital upgrades. They have a small amount of that remaining, about $1,400, and Pastor Barnett is requesting that the church use that money to put in a new wheelchair ramp that will expand public access to the building where the community meals are. So this RL is just amending the project scope outlined in the agreement to include a ramp.
Any questions?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Friedman.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Friedman.
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Councilwoman.
So just to clarify, this is not a change in the amount of money, but what the money is allocated for. Is that correct?
That's correct. They were awarded 11,000 and that's not changing. It's just the scope.
I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Riley.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Megan. How are you?
Hi, Councilwoman. I'm well.
Good, good. So now, you said the money was awarded as capital upgrades, but I thought it was under COVID for community support. I thought it had a different, we used the money on a different line, and because it met COVID requirements, which capital improvements would not have met that need, would not have met those requirements.
I
Am I
don't
confusing the two items?
I don't believe this was our COVID funding. I think this was just capital community development block grant funds. Either way, my understanding is that because it is increasing accessibility to the location where the community meals program is held, Steve Carson has indicated that it would be and it should be an eligible use.
Okay.
And that sort of all falls to HUD, and Steve is our expert HUD regulations person. So he has given it the preliminary okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Okay, let's move on to RL 21-25.
Okay, this is to authorize the sale of 113 Gaylord Street to James Lewis. This is a vacant city-owned lot where we had a blighted property demolition last month. Mr. Lewis is the neighbor to that property. He owns the house next door, so this would be another sale through the city side lot program.
I have a question.
I'm sorry?
Councilman Burns here.
Oh, yeah.
Councilman Burns, I have a question.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Yeah, hi, Megan.
Hi, Councilman.
Hi, what happens to the assessment on that, to the tax assessment? Is that just added, anything added to his tax bill, or is it, and does the deed then change to incorporate both parcels if he ever sells the house, or?
Yeah,
How does
so
that work?
through the side lot program, when we sell these vacant lots through that program, it's our policy to merge the vacant lot with the adjacent lot of the neighbor that's buying it. So it becomes just one parcel, and it's typically deed restricted so that it has to remain green space. They can't build on it.
Okay, thanks. And do we get, does his property remain the same, the tax assessment, or do we make any more money on it, or how does that work?
I
Hi,
believe it does.
Councilman. I'm sorry, Megan. This is Ken Frank. Megan, you can answer if you.
No, go ahead, Ken. Thank you.
Councilman, generally, a small piece of vacant property, it will add to the assessment, but the addition is usually de minimis. And in fact, one of the reasons we tell people to merge the property is because if it remains as a separate independent building lot, then it would be taxed at a higher rate.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
Madam President?
Yes, Mr. Scanlon, go ahead.
So Mr. Lewis is obviously a constituent of my district, and he's sat next to his property for 5 years and watched it deteriorate. He maintains his property very well, like a lot of neighbors we have across the city. So I'm glad this is getting done. I'm glad he bought this. He's into his property, and he will maintain it pristinely. So I'm glad it's finally done for him. That's all I want to say.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
So moving on to RL 21-19 with Charlie. Are you there?
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Hi.
I'm on my cell phone because I couldn't get my internet here from home.
Okay.
We have two RLs. The first one is for the 2020 budget. We'd like to increase the appropriations for equipment and pump repairs and for chemicals. The amounts would be equipment and pump repairs of $17,000 and the amounts for chemicals would be $20,000. And we also need a small increase in the equipment and pump repairs electrical, which would be $3,000. The chemicals we're suggesting come from the chemicals from contingency. And the required $20,000 for the two equipment and pump repairs come from maintenance agreements. We have maintenance agreements planned, but because the equipment wasn't turned over to us, we have excess in this line. And because we also had to repair and maintain what was there, we had additional repairs. So it's just a shifting rather than a total increase in budget.
Any questions?
Madam President, I have a question for Mr. Pearsall.
Councilman Scanlon, go ahead.
Mr. Pearsall, why the need for additional chemicals?
The chemical line, we're now going into, this is the first year we've actually used the digesters, and we haven't had historical experience on those. And the digesters, they're basically bugs, so it's like you're having living creatures, and we have to adjust. There's levels of carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and iron that have to have certain attributes to keep the bugs alive. So in specific examples, we're not getting enough phosphate from the sewage, which is actually a good thing, but the bugs have to have that to live. So we have to add phosphoric acid. That's very expensive. Typically we buy things that are $1 a gallon for hydrated lime or some of the anti-chlor. This is $7.52 a gallon. So because of the mix, as you know, we warn you, it's weather related. As we get more water, it dilutes things. We have to add chemicals. The methanol is the same type of thing. We have to bubble that in. We've actually used less methanol because of the balance of the chemicals. So it's a process where we're constantly chasing and monitoring to make sure that the levels of those four nutrients are where they need to be to feed the influence. You know, we tried to run a very tight budget in 2020 and we've come out fairly well, but we do have increase in a more expensive chemical than what we had expected.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. RL 21-20, please.
The second one, this is at the request of Controller Chuck Shager. They give us a heads up at the beginning of the year for the debt service amount, and he was actually able, I believe, to ban for different amounts. So he's asking for an increase of $83,257.19 on the Johnson, or from the city side. There's available funds on the Johnson City side, so it's a shift between those two. It's not a question of Johnson City funding the city, it's just there's available funds. You know, any overages go back by flows to the owners. But this is a case where he had an opportunity to take advantage of some better financing, so he moves from debt forward on the city side.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pearsall.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, so it looks like we're moving on to RL 21-22 with Chuck. Where's Chuck?
Do you hear me, President?
Hi. Yes.
This is an RL going back to 2020 when we refunded the 2014 bond. We had to put up some money. I believe it was like about $74,000, all part of a refinancing cost. And when it was all said and done, it was $6,091.35 less than what was originally budgeted or in that refunding process. That money was sent back to us, and we have to use it to pay down debt in 2021. So what I'm basically doing is showing the money coming back into an unclassified account and increasing a band principal payment to make that payment in April.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Chuck. Moving on to Jared, are you here?
Yep, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Tell us about RL 21-14.
Okay, this was an RL. I sent a email to City Council regarding this is authorizing an agreement with the Finn Institute for Public Safety to provide technical assistance and training assistance for the Binghamton Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. I have a copy of their proposal attached. This is essentially to assist the city in conducting its mandated review of the police department as part of Governor Cuomo's executive order. The Finn Institute is also assisting the city of Schenectady, who were, modeling our process after discussing with some experts. So their roles are identified in the proposal. I sent a follow-up email. This partnership was identified and highlighted by Governor Cuomo as part of his State of the State address, as part of several communities that are instituting innovative practices in meeting the executive order. So we believe that they're going to be a great addition to the process, one that brings a lot of legitimacy, ones that bring a lot of expertise and working on public safety strategies that can assist in this process. And we're requesting it to be expedited to get them under contract and in place in advance of the first meetings of the group.
Any questions?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Friedman.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Jared. I was wondering if you could help me understand this timeline that's outlined here, where it says we plan for a 3-month time frame with work commencing upon execution of a contract, but no later than January 8th, and a report delivered no later than March 7th. How is that? Can you help me understand this time frame here? Because this January 8th has already passed and we don't have 3 months before March 7th.
Sure. So the date of the proposal is back in December 16th. So that this was a time frame based on initial conversations, but the time frame that was outlined as part of the mayor's news release outlines exactly what the committee will be doing, so we can make sure that we have it completed for the April 1st deadline.
I see. So this contract that we would be voting on would have the updated timeline and not this outdated one?
Well, what's being voted on is the actual plan. So this is simply just a framework, and obviously an early framework of what type of work would be commencing. And so the first meeting I believe is next week. So that's when the official process will begin with the committee, and a report will be able to be completed. It's not up to the Finn Institute to create the report. It is the committee, but that is just, they were making an assumption based on some timelines, which is shifted by a few weeks, but that was their assumption back in December.
I see. I mean, I know in March, City Council is voting on the timeline, but I mean, for this piece of legislation specifically, the timeline listed here, sorry, I'm scrolling, looking through it. But the agreement has the outdated timeline. So I'm just wondering if for this RL, not the plan overall, are we going to have an updated timeline?
Councilwoman, this is Ken. That's the sort of thing that once I know it's approved, that's the sort of things that I amend as part of the contract before it's executed.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilman Burns, I have a question.
Go ahead, Councilman Burns.
Hi, Jared. Is there going to be somebody at Finn that city council members can contact to talk to them about what other cities have done that they've worked with?
Yes, Finn will be sitting on the steering committee meetings, and while their role is to act as a technical support, absolutely, that is clearly the intent and their focus. They've looked at a number of different public safety platforms, so they are here as a resource to the city.
Right. So any council member will be able to contact them and say, Schenectady did this or Syracuse did that, and they'll have those answers for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that I think throughout this process that we follow the framework of that there's a steering committee that while the institute is working for the city, it's really working for this collaborative and going to be constructing and getting feedback as part of it. So they're here, they're a resource, and I think that they can answer questions that come up as part of this process.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Riley.
Go ahead, Councilman Riley.
Thank you. Hi, Jared. This is Angela. Thank you for sending this RL upon request. I do have a question, though, regarding what was stated to Councilwoman Friedman earlier. Per their proposal, and so, well, let me move one step backwards. No contract has been executed on behalf of this agreement thus far, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and such contract will be created per what Ken shared after we approve what's before us right now.
That's correct. City Council is authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement.
Into an agreement that will be revised after we approve it in terms of timeline and deadlines.
That's correct. I would say that we want to make sure that we have benchmarks for what's needed.
Okay, so since we are not able to review the contract, how are we to hold them accountable for what is expected?
Well,
Jared?
yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Jared, I'm sorry. I mean, perhaps tomorrow, if we know that it's being approved tomorrow night, we can put in the new benchmarks.
Okay.
Just advise council of what the benchmarks will be prior to the meeting.
That would help us tremendously. Again, yes, we do know that they are working in Schenectady. However, in Schenectady, they started last year and were able to launch a community survey. So there's some things in here that, again, based upon their proposal, would take at least 3 months, and we are short of that time. And I'm just, again, although you did mention that they're not writing the proposal, they are spearheading and kind of taking the lead based upon their experience in other cities. So I just don't want, if we're going to set the expectation, we need to know what's being sent from a council perspective.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Jared, you're up again. RL 121-15.
Sure. So this is an annual, if not more than once per year, RL that comes down. Back in 2016, I'm pretty sure it was, Mayor David worked with Broome County Legislature, then County Executive Preston, to negotiate a new way that municipalities can benefit in the fight against blight. And what was negotiated is that Broome County, as part of its efforts to support its municipalities, would pay for or take on the cost of some demolition related expenses. Two of those have to do directly with the demolition, and that's waiver of tipping fees for single and two family homes that are being demolished by municipalities, and then also paying for the required pre-demolition asbestos screenings that these demolitions require. This is when an environmental engineer enters a building, looks for asbestos that needs to be abated in advance of demolition. So this is money that comes out of the Broome County Government Brownfield Fund. They had a meeting late in December to approve roughly $29,000 to the city of Binghamton to cover the costs of those pre-demolition asbestos screenings. So we have to officially accept that money and apply it to those costs. That was a huge benefit, and funding that doesn't have to be eaten up as part of our demolition budget, and that funding can support future demolitions.
Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Jared. So moving on to pending legislation.
So
Lee.
we have two from last meeting that's going tomorrow night. They both require public hearings, so we're going to have tomorrow night as well. They're both for bonding. One is for the 2021 bond for this year. One is amending the fire bond.
Okay. Thank you, Lee. Any other questions? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Adjourn.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good night.
Good night.